Please help me welcome Mr. Michael Hughes.
Good evening, folks. The people of Idaho are nice people, right? They're good people. They're willing to help out. They got great ownership in their company, right? In their own profession, great pride in their work, and a lot of untapped energy, right? So I thought if I brought along an action plan, a culture action plan to this organization with this raw material and this heart, could we make this bigger? Could we make this organization bigger? Could we get it firing on all cylinders? So tonight I'm going to talk about a little bit of my experience and some of the cultural learning I've had, and then about 8 different concepts that I've developed or used or leveraged over the last few years to put together into a cultural action plan. I think one of the things that we drop first as leaders is the culture action plan. We'll make our revenue action plan, we'll make our profitability action plan. We'll talk about culture at the start of the year. When you get halfway through the year, right, and you realize you haven't really done anything, and then you get to the end of the year and you create another culture action plan, maybe, right, but we don't have the discipline to follow through on it. So I'm going to share some ideas, and hopefully on your napkin, some of the best action plans in the world are developed on a napkin over a meal or over a drink. You can capture 1 or 2 of these bullet points that might be helpful to you to reapply in your organization. So I'm going to share 8 different tidbits, and hopefully there's 1 or 2 of these that are valuable to you, and I'll tell a little story behind each of these things. So first one is this airplane model concept. So I developed this concept when I was in Boston. I went out there, and if you can imagine, Gillette had a lot of systems and processes and whatnot, and then P&G came in and took it over. And what did leadership do? It rolled out all its systems and processes on top of it, right? When I was sent out there, I was told by my boss, you got to get this organization in control. They're skipping safety checks. People must be lazy. People don't care about the rules, aren't doing their quality tests, etc. We have all these problems going on, right? And I started off in a place from, well, let's really try and understand, are people really trying to be this bad, right? I spent time on the floor, followed people around, and worked out pretty quickly that if they were to do everything they were asked to do, it would take them 16 hours of their 8-hour day to get all that done. So what do people do when they've got 20 things to do and they've got capacity for 10 things? What do? They make choices, right? They do 10 things. They pick the 10 things quite often, right? Because some boss somewhere is telling them to do something. Right? And they fail. They might miss a critical safety check. They might miss a critical production step or whatever else, right? So I went in and realized that this is not the people's fault, right? There's a big problem here. At the same time, I watched a documentary about the designing of the next 737 in Boeing. And one of the things that kind of struck me was there's a design rule for designing the next version of an airplane. Right? And if you're a designer of that, the rule is if you want to add a component, a piece of technology, a gadget, a sensor, whatever it is, into that new airplane, and designers always want to add new things to the airplane. The rule is you have to take away something of equal or greater weight before you add that new thing in, right? Does that make sense if you're designing an airplane, right? If you didn't have that rule, the airplane gets overloaded, becomes inefficient, right? Can crash and burn. So after seeing this documentary and seeing what's happened to our people, I put 2 and 2 together and came up with this airplane model. Right? I made a rule. I got all 200 people in a room together, and I said, we're going to implement the airplane model rule. And the airplane model rule is, you cannot, as a leader, the leader cannot roll out anything new to the employees on the floor that are doing the work, that are adding the value to our product, without taking something of equal or greater time or effort away from that person first. Right? Total shock and silence from both parties in this room, right? We had the opposite of servant leadership culture in this plant originally, right? People did what their bosses told them to do, or they tried to do as much of it as they could physically possibly do. And bosses, the leaders, the managers, behaved like everyone was there to work for them. It was the opposite of what it should have been, right? When we introduced this rule, the rule became, hey, you've got to go spend time on the floor with the people and work out what are their hassles in life, what are their barriers. Our job as leaders is to break down barriers, is to serve these people. Right? And it took a total U-turn. We had all the leaders wearing the same uniforms. We got rid of special parking spaces. We got rid of a whole wing of an office that they had for me and to sit in a regular place. Right? Because we were there to help them and serve them and go out there. If they needed help cleaning the line, we needed to do that. I spent time shadowing this guy on the floor He was testing the height of the stems of the aerosol cans, 24 cans every 20 minutes. He'd go over, take him about 5 to 10 minutes to test them, right? So about a third to half of his day he's testing these things. And after 3 hours and lots of these tests, not one of them had failed. I said, how many failed yesterday? None. How many failed last week? Oh, none. I said, have you ever had any fail? None have ever failed. Do you know anybody that's had any that ever failed? I've never heard of it before. I said, why are you doing it? You guys told us to do it. I said, who's you guys? Who told you to do this thing? Well, it took me 2 days to find out who you guys was. And it was a guy in R&D back in Cincinnati in headquarters, of course. So I called him up. I said, hey, why are we testing 24 cans every 20 minutes in our factory? He says, you guys are still doing that? I said, I was out there 3 years ago doing this experiment, and we wanted to make sure that the machine was set up right. You literally cannot make it wrong after it's set up right. There's so many sensors and testing. And we killed that thing the next day, and a person on every shift, on every line, got a third of their day back, right? And it's that approach of finding areas. How can we simplify people's lives down, right? And when you tell a manager that you have to do that, right? We had airplane models in the factory. We had pictures up, we had the rule, and people could come to me as the plant manager and tell me if anybody violated the airplane rule, right? If you were doing that as a manager, we had a serious sit-down conversation, right? What have you done? So people's work plans and action plans for the year became the first half, I've got to take work away, and the second half, well, half the stuff we were going to do in the second half didn't need to be done because I simplified the work so much and it was already getting done because now they had time to go do it. Right? So it's just an important concept. It drove a huge cultural shift in that organization, a real flip-flop of the triangle, the leadership triangle, and much more servant leadership. The next concept is this concept about everyone wants to be great, right? As a leader, right, there's lots of leaders in this room, do you really believe that all of your employees come in every day wanting to be great? Not just good, not just average, not just get by, but that they want to be great? Right? Think about it. Do you really think that and feel that? Right? We'd all like to say yes to that. Sometimes our behaviors, especially when things go wrong, and things go wrong in the world, is who screwed this up? Right? Who messed up? Why is that person not doing this right? Right? We want to blame the employees pretty fast because we need somebody to kind of call out as the scapegoat of an issue. Versus if we really, really in our core, in our heart, if we're leading from the heart and we believe this person didn't come in this morning and try and screw up, right? What is wrong in our system that enabled them? Is the training right? Was the expectation clear, right? Has this person been shown how to do this right the first time initially, right? The blue eye and the brown eye analogy comes from an experiment that was done in the 50s and 60s in Iowa. You guys probably heard about it. Where a school teacher and a psychologist came into a classroom at the start of a year of, I think, 7-year-old kids, and they did this experiment called the blue-eye, brown-eyed experiment. You can Google it and YouTube it, but basically what they said was they tested all the kids, first of all, for their IQ intelligence level, and of course they got a normal bell curve across the whole classroom. And then they announced to the kids that a new study's come out, and we've just realized that the most intelligent people in the world are brown-eyed kids. Brown-eyed people, right? And the least intelligent people are the blue-eyed people. So if you got brown eyes, come up to the front of the class, you sit up here because you're going to pay attention, you're going to understand it anyway. And the blue-eyed kids, you guys can go to the back of the class, and if you pick up something, good for you, right? And they left it like that for 3 months. And then they tested again. So what did they find when they tested again? How did the brown-eyed kids do? Right? They did better. Way better than expected. The blue-eyed kids, even the top of the class, blue-eyed kid did worse than average. A less than average brown-eyed kid did far better than average, right? They expected the blue eyes to do a little bit worse. They didn't expect the big jump beyond intellectual reason. How are these brown-eyed kids doing so well, right? So this concept comes from that experiment, right? I truly believe if you start off at a point of believing that people want to be great, right? They want to learn more. They want to be challenged, right? How will you treat them? How will you interact with them, right? You can tell somebody and try and fake it and they'll read it. They'll read into you not really believing them, right? They mightn't read it in the first moment. They'll read it the second moment when you try and micromanage them, right? You didn't really think I could do this leadership job because here you are all in my business, right? You got to really trust them. You got to give them enough rope to hang themselves. You got to give them enough rope to really trust that you do it. You got to have a conversation with them. We have a woman here in Idaho. She was a receiving clerk, taking in all the trucks of raw materials, pack materials that come in. Every time I interact with her in my first few months, I was like, this lady has energy, right? I talked about, we were looking for a leader for the warehouse. And people told me, no, she doesn't have a degree. She doesn't have this education. She's not great on computers. All these excuses. I'm like, everything I see, I think this person could be great, right? I went and talked to her and asked her, do you want to be a supervisor position? I don't know if I could do that. And I said, I think you can do that. I believe you can do that. I'm going to help you do that, right? She eventually took on the supervisor role. She's been promoted twice since then, right, into a pretty highly paid salary role, and she is rocking her world. Right? The results of the warehouse, getting stuff to our packing line on time this time last year was about 70% of the time it arrived before it was due. The last 3 months have been 99.6%, and it's all her. She is on a high, right? And it's just giving that person that credibility, that belief, and the confidence that you really trust them. It's starting off from a point of not blaming people for mistakes, and miracles can happen, things that I haven't expected to happen. Sometimes things that people themselves don't even believe in can happen after you do that. The next concept comes from a book called The Carrot Principle. If you haven't read it, it's a very simple, easy book. There it is up there by Adrian Gostick. A lot of people, when they make a culture action plan, they think reward and recognition. I got to reward my people, and they might or might not put a new reward program in place. In fact, a lot of people shy away from it because they're worried about offending somebody else. And right, I'll tell you, put anything in place, get something going and off the ground. Quite often when we get it off the ground, we do something like pizza lunches. Anybody do pizza lunches for their teams as a reward? Something like that? Or T-shirts or something, maybe not. Maybe it's just in factory environments. But after a couple of them, and they hit another record month, they expect another pizza lunch. If you forget one of them, now it's a disincentive and people have forgotten about it. What the Carrot Principle talks about is, ideally on an individual basis, you do a reward that's very personalized to that person, right? Find out something about them. They're into mechanics, buy a subscription to a mechanic magazine for them, right? That is the rewards when they did a study that people remember. They don't remember the pizza lunches or the regular things or even cash that's given out as a bonus. They remember special things. I read that book while I was working in Boston, and we had a really tough spate of overtime that was required. So I decided we're going to put a cool, different kind of a spin on things. And instead of buying all 200 people a pizza lunch and spending a couple of grand doing that, I said we're going to do something different. Every day you work of overtime in the next 4 weeks, your name goes into a hat, right? And at the end of 4 weeks, there's only 10 people who are going to get a reward. You're going to pull 10 names out of the hat, right? And right at break time, when the cafeteria is full, we're going to have a stretch limo show up here. Most of these people have never been anywhere near a stretch limo. You're going to get a wave goodbye to your friends, get in the limo, go down to Fenway Park, have some fun, have a party, go out for a nice meal, right? Can you imagine how much talk happened about that in that 4 weeks? How much excitement? Who's going to win this ticket? And for a year later on, people are still talking about this unusual, different way of celebrating. The next concept is the 10-degree rule, right? This is about how we handle crisis, right? There's always going to be crisis in our world. There's nothing easy or else somebody else will be doing it. So there's problems going to come at us. How we behave as a leader, I believe, has a gigantic impact on how your team behave to that crisis, right? From everything from your body language to how you communicate it. I'll give an example. I was running a factory one Christmas, and we had a very light Christmas load, lighter than we've ever had. So we're telling everybody you get to take loads of days off over Christmas, myself included. It was going to be the lightest Christmas we've ever had. It's Friday morning. Christmas is the following Wednesday. And I get a phone call from my boss in Cincinnati. She's surrounded by red tape. She muffles through the red tape and says, we have a challenge on our hands. One of our factories is after really messing up on this product, this Old Spice hair care gel that we're about to launch, and they've no capacity to fix their own problem. We need your help, right? And your heart just sinks. You're like, are you serious, right? And we needed everybody in our factory to work all the way through the holiday weekend and through, besides Christmas Day, work every other day through the holiday to protect this launch on the 1st of January, right? Now, my initial instinct and reaction was to go on the negative 5 degrees, right? There's a very small window between doing the right thing and the wrong thing here as a leader. And I pulled my whole team together. I could have easily said, this is ridiculous. It's not our fault. We're the victims of this, right? But please sign up anyway. You know, these Cincinnati crazy people and whatever else, right? And throwing the company under the bus and whatnot, right? That's a very easy, natural thing to do. Instead, I stood in front of the team and said, we have a phenomenal opportunity here. We're trying to grow as a plant, right? Here's a crisis that everybody in the hair care world knows about, and we can step up and be the heroes here, right? We're trying to win more business, to do more manipulation type work, so we have a chance to go do that. We're going to do it and have fun. We're going to get music in here. We're going to get food in here. We're going to rock the place. And we had the whole team signing up, right? We had all the way till New Year's Eve. We got it all shipped out before Christmas Eve. We made a video of the event and put it up on the P&G YouTube site. I got thousands of hits and people found out about us and actually sent us more business, more projects. Here's a team that works out. People were inventing machinery during that 3 days to work out how to get the equipment to go faster and to knock the thing out, right? So how you stand up at the start of that crisis, how you come across as a leader, your attitude will have a gigantic impact on the rest of the organization. I've done a lot of studies on millennials over the years, in China, in Mexico, in Europe. And the first thing I'll say on millennials is I think they get a really bad rap, right? They're far better than people of our generation and older lay them out. I usually start my millennial presentation with a quote about these folks are entitled, they think they deserve everything, they're not hardworking, they're lazy. And then I flip to who the quote's from, and it's from 1876, right? And basically, I think every generation thinks a couple of generations below them are useless and entitled and all those kind of things. You know, from the studies that I've done, there's a lot of things that are very similar from any generation. People want to do well. They're willing to work hard if you set them up for that, right? The one thing that is a little bit different with millennials is their expectation of access to leadership. They do not think they need to work through every level of leader to get to the head guy in an organization. They think they can walk right into your office and have a chat with you, right? And that's just normal. And I don't think that's a bad thing, but that's my experience of it so far. So to try and kind of help with this concept, I came up about 5 years ago with this concept. I called it open mic. And I meet with groups of 20 people at a time, at least once a quarter, sometimes more often than that people have access to sit with me and ask anything they want to ask. There's questions about the company, what we're doing in the community, about career development, about whatever rumors that they've heard. Sometimes we don't invite the group's boss so they can talk to me about what's working and not working in their organization, especially if there's been some tension, right? But to give these folks access to what's going on in your world helps them really feel like they're connected, right? And it kind of fulfills that expectation. For me, I learn a ton of stuff about what's going on in the organization in a pretty efficient way. I do site communications to all 400 people in Idaho and our other companies in LA and Denver every month. I talk to every single employee, but you're standing up in front of 100, 200 people. Most people are too uncomfortable to ask a real question in that environment, right? You can't afford to do this one-to-one with every employee, in my situation at least. But these groups of about 20 people, right? You set the tone, you make it nice and relaxed and start off with a joke or a story or whatever else. People open up and then they can jump in with all kinds of questions and feel like they've heard from the leader of the organization. The next concept's about branding. This is something I learned through a training course that I've taken and actually brought to every organization I've worked in the last 6 years, from Pathways for Leadership. It's a Veris Global program. I learned this program. I actually applied it to my family first, this concept of a brand, a team identity, right? And I thought about this. My kids at the time were 2 and 4 years old. And I went back home to them right after the training, and I asked them a question. I said, what does it mean to be a Hughes? Right? And they're like, I don't know. What does it mean to be a Hughes? I said, it means 3 things. The Hugheses are famous for 3 things. I'm totally faking it. Totally. All right? We're famous for using our manners all the time in every situation. We're famous for always sharing our toys, our time with people that have less advantages than us. And we're famous for try and try again. We never give up, even if we fail, right? Even if we don't win, we're going to try harder next time, right? Totally made this up. If I'd have thought more about it, I probably would have made 6 things and expanded on this. But at the time, if you ask my kids now, they're 7 and 9, what does it mean to be a Hughes? They will rattle those things off, right? And when they misbehave, which they do, you're like, are you being a Hughes now? You're right, Dad, I didn't use my manners, or whatever it is, right? So they've built this identity in their head. They really believe this is what the Hughes is, God forbid, when they grow up a little bit older and see some of my behaviors. But it's a great branding thing, right? Now, I took that to the factory in Iowa, right? Here's a big factory, 60 years old, $2 billion worth of product going through it every year. And before I moved back there as a plant manager, I had heard, from not being working in the factory, I'd heard a lot of negative things about Iowa, about the factory in Iowa. I've heard, yes, they're capable. Yes, they got all the technology. They are a pain in the butt to work with. They resist every change we try and bring to them. A new project, a new initiative, a new piece of machinery, a new process, whatever it is, they think they know better. They fight everything we try to do. Sometimes we'll send stuff to China because they'll at least do it, and they'll just do what they're told, and off we go. We're off to the races, right? So our factory was losing business, right? Losing jobs and capacity because of this attitude. We were the resistors of change. So I did my Jedi mind trick that I did on my kids with the whole factory. After a couple of months there, I put up this slide, and I said, we are the champions of change. Again, totally faking it. We were the opposite of champions of change, right? I said, this is what we're going to be famous for. We got everybody uniforms that you had to wear every day from the plant manager on down, right? You saw it in one of those last pictures with the Champions of Change logo, huge banners hanging from the ceiling. Everywhere you went, from the tabletop triangle things to calling out, here's what a champion of change means, right? Taking on challenges, learning from everything, to seeing the positive side of stuff, all of these kind of things. Right? And the space of about a year to 2 years, right now, it was on the bottom of people's emails, right? So it's hard to send an email back to whoever in headquarters or whatever else resisting change when the bottom of your email says, I'm a champion of change, right? So people genuinely changed, right? We started doing projects that we would have resisted for years and held up and whatnot. By the 3rd year, we did a record number of projects, 850 new products launched in our 3rd year there. People from Asia were sent to us to learn how to do change better, right? And it started from this branding of ourselves and our image and setting those expectations, setting that bar at a level that people could rise to and understand, oh, if I'm part of this team, I'm expected to be a champion of change, so the path of least resistance is to be a champion of change, okay? So it's reapplicable in lots of situations, lots of size teams. The other cultural shift that you can enable in your organization, and we've done it here in Idaho, where we were kind of very focused on our internal metrics and our financials and whatever else. And teams will get excited about that in a very short period of time. It's hard to keep people sustained and empowered by that. Some of them could care less if the company makes more profit, right, off their hard-earned work. What people do care about is, what's the bigger picture here? What are we here for in our community, right? Are we going to change people's lives in Idaho Falls, in Idaho, in the U.S., in the world? Right? And we set a mission in our company that we're going to impact kids with a STEM program, science, technology, engineering, math program, where we're going to try and touch 1,000 kids a year and have them do a little science experiment that we created where you make a little lotion, you put oil and water and an emulsifier in and shake it up and add some fragrance into that. You get some crazy mixtures of fragrances when you do this with kids. And they have made their own little skincare product that they bring home to their parents, and they're right. You ask kids at the end of that, who wants to be a chemist? You get to be a chemist, right? And work in Idaho Falls and invent new beauty care products, especially for the girls in the group. Like, this is a super exciting opportunity, right? So this is one of our company missions now, is to have this impact on the community. And I'll tell you, the cultural impact internally, which wasn't the intention of doing this, the level of pride and ownership. And, we had an event at Melaleuca Field with 300 kids that came to that, and several other companies helped us host that. But the pride in our own employees that, hey, we're not just all about ourselves and the money, we're here to do something bigger for the community. So sharing that with people can have a pretty good cultural impact too. The last one is about, how do you get your mission and vision to everybody in the organization? One of the things I do when I visit a new site or a new organization, if we're doing an acquisition or my P&G days going to a new plant, right? The plant manager, the leader, whoever it is, will tell you, here's what we're all about, here's our mission. First thing I'll do is go out to the floor and pick a random person and ask him, what is your mission? Right? If that happened in your company, what would happen? Would you get the exact same answer that you would have told the same person asking that question? Right? Next question I ask after that is, what are you personally doing to help drive that mission? Right? You can get lots of blank stares. Right? Half our job as leaders is to get the right people on the boat, right? I like using this rowing analogy. And getting the people on the boat is one thing, right? The next thing is to get them all to actually pick up an oar and start rowing, right? That can be a challenge. Now try and get them all rowing in the same direction. That's really a challenge in business when you got different departments and silos and whatnot. And then if you can get everybody rowing in the same direction at the same cadence and the oars are going in at the exact same time. I got to do 8-man rowing once. It is like you are on air. It's like you're not even, it's like it's effortless. Everybody's flying, right? And if you can get your organization like that, you get the same exhilarating feeling, right? Everybody's moving in the same direction towards the same goal. Everyone understands the importance of each other player on the team, right? And everybody's in it together, right? So you got to start off with really understanding what your mission is. So for Elevation Labs, which is the parent company in Northwest Cosmetic Labs, our mission is pretty clear. We kept it relatively simple. This phenomenal customer experience every day. We need our employees highly engaged and empowered, right? And we want to have a positive, progressive impact on our community. Okay? Relatively memorable. We got the 3 C's coming out of that. We convert that into some strategies. I'm not going to go through all the strategies. And quite often, that's where it ends in many organizations, right? And maybe you can remember that, maybe you can't. Right? I think you're getting about 10% of the value of this process out of your people if you stop there. We go a little bit further. So for a department, if you're in the R&D department, right, what your expectations are now are to pick out what are the 5 rocks, we call this our 5 rocks program, what are the 5 important things that we can do to help deliver the company mission, right? So they'll pick out from all the different areas, here's what we can go do. And they'll develop against those 5 areas specific projects that they can deliver in the space of a year, right? This isn't come in and tie your shoelace projects or do your day job projects. These are game-changing projects, right? So for example, the R&D department's helping drive this STEM program we talked about, project to develop better quality formulas, et cetera, right? So then at the start of the year, they know exactly what they're responsible for, right? And we call it the 5 rocks. If you haven't seen the Stephen Covey YouTube video of Stephen Covey, 5 rocks, go have a look at that. It explains the concept of, quite often we get lost in the minutiae of our days. The emails, the little fires that we fight, right? And the big projects, the big improvement work we wanted to do, right? You ever drive in on a Monday morning and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and you drive home on a Monday evening, or maybe the Friday evening, and you never got near that work, right? Has that ever happened to anybody? Right? The discipline in the 5 rocks program is you work on the 5 rocks first, right? The minutiae can fill in the gaps around that, right? And you'll see that concept on the video, right? It takes discipline to move to a 5 rocks mentality, right? The discipline has to start with me as the leader. So every single month, I review with 14 departments in Idaho and all my departments in LA and Denver. It takes about 4 business days out of every month of my life to go and review with them how are they doing on their 5 rocks, these big projects. What barriers have they run into? How can I help? Is there another department holding them up that I can help influence? Right? Are they hit a record number and they get recognition for that? Right? We roll out some targets sometimes at the start of a year and never talk to the team again about those targets or how they're doing against it. You try and do that a year later and they could care less, right? They'll wait you out on that thing. If you're going to show up every month and have a rigorous review of those 5 rocks and set up your reward program, your bonus program, whatever it is, against those 5 rocks, you can have a phenomenal outcome of engagement, right? If you go into the Idaho Falls facility and ask anyone here at this table, number 4, what your 5 rocks are, they'll all tell you what they're working on in 2018, and now they're getting ready for 2019. And then they'll know what that does to help the company deliver its mission overall, right? So the engagement, the memorability of it, and the accountability and the reward that goes with that creates this continuous momentum of progress and improvement. Just to wrap it up, I'll give you an example of what we did this last year. right? So, and using some of the tools that we talked about today. So here was our customer focus. And what I recognized when we went in, using the airplane model, we couldn't solve world hunger on the first year. We're not going to get everything done. And one of our worst performing results was on time in full. Are we getting the product to our customers on time? We ship about 300 and something different orders every single month. And we weren't getting them on time or the full quantity that they'd asked for. So we said, right, we're going to simplify. Everybody in the company is going to work on getting on time and full. Because if we can't get that to our products, to our customers on time, forget about all the other stuff, right? They're not going to give us more orders, right? So thinking about the blue-eye, brown-eye concept, we set a glide path. We started off about 50% of the time we were getting the orders perfect. The industry average is about 70%, by the way. And we set a glide path, right? We're not going to solve it in the first month. We're going to work our way through it, right? And step by step, with the genuine expectation that by the end of the year, we're going to be at 90%, right? Way above industry average for this particular industry. Okay, we did the 5 rocks program. Again, everybody had at least 1 rock or more based on how can they contribute, right? In the shipping department to get stuff shipped out on time, in the customer service department to get the orders in on time, how we can shave time off everything. We applied the carrot principle. We did some different kind of rewards, right? I don't believe if the company's going to win and succeed that every employee that contributes to that should see some of that win. We gave, if we hit the first 2 quarters, we gave away 2 paid holidays that typically you have to either be working or use a PTO out. They were not the most productive days in the world. We're like, hey, if we hit these numbers, we're going to give those away as holidays. In the last half of the year, if we hit those numbers, we're going to give away a cash bonus to every single employee in the company, right? So everyone's going to win the same way. How do we do? For the year, these are real numbers. As of today, for our October number, we're at 91%, right? So this is an example of, and I'll tell you, the people at the table here deserve a ton of recognition, but for me, it's an example of setting the bar at a place that's stretching and achievable, getting people engaged, trusting your people are going to get there, simplifying down what you're going after so you don't have to solve every single problem in the world in your first year, right? And I think, you know, this would have been considered miraculous where we were a year ago. We'd averaged 52% for 2 years, by the way, so this wasn't just a short-term problem. Right, in a very complex beauty care industry where customers change their mind every 16 days. So, right, the other kind of part that goes along with this is this branding concept of Elevation Labs, right? And we came up with this new name for our parent company that has the 3 companies now, headquartered here in Idaho Falls. And the branding of Elevation is, right, we're going to elevate our performance. We're going to elevate the customer's experience, right? I'll tell you, if you ask anyone on that team, whatever goal we're going to set ourselves for 2019, we're going to have that mountainside look of a challenge, and we're going to get to the top of that mountain together as a team in a very focused way, right? So that's what the brand of being part of the Elevation Labs team means. We're going to rally together, we're going to work together, we're going to simplify down the work, get focused on it, and deliver excellence for our team and our customers. So, what's your move coming out of all this? I hope there's been 1 or 2 things that got on your drink-stained napkin that you bring back to your place of work on Monday morning and assess what are we going to do differently, right? I thoroughly believe that if you apply your leadership heart, your passion to look after your people, to bring the team together, to have a really good culture, right? And a plan that you're rigorous and disciplined about, as rigorous as you are about your financial plan, your productivity plan. You put these 2 things together, the productivity and the finance stuff looks after itself. It's been my experience everywhere I've worked, and I'm seeing it play out again here in Idaho and Los Angeles and wherever else we work.